to talk a little bit about advertising and how it is a very challenging time for traditional advertising. Can you maybe tell us a little bit about just what's advertising in general? I think there's a general misconception between advertising and promotion. So if you can just explain maybe the difference, and then what is traditional advertising?
Yeah. Well, I guess advertising in the broadest terms is just talking about your product or service or thing that you are selling to people in the hopes that they buy it. And that can take lots of different forms. Traditional advertising is really coming up with the idea. So like, how are we going to talk about something? You could sell this t-shirt and it could be about how soft it is in the materials. It could be that it's eco-friendly. It could be that it's black and like New York chic. It could be it's great for bald guys. There are lots of ways to tell this story. So traditional advertising comes up with the story, and then usually the strategy for how the story is told, which is called media. You know, is it going to be told through TV advertisements or radio or banner ads or Instagram, or where are we telling the story? So traditional ad agencies do all of that. And then there are a lot of other advertising companies that do lots of different little things, you know, whether it's like producing Facebook ads, or whether it's running Facebook ads, or whether it's SEO, or whether it's building websites, or there are a lot of specialty little shops, they're called.
But that wouldn't be a part of traditional advertising, like when you start like diving into what like everything like online, from paid ads to social media campaigns, influencer campaigns. We're talking about digital marketing, right?
Yeah, and that maybe is like a point to make, is that traditional advertising, emphasis on the word traditional, mostly isn't good at the new shit. And they maybe are trying to be, because, and this is part of why traditional advertising is dying, is that like, if you're Nike or Jeep or Coca-Cola, you're like, why am I spending so much on TV ads when no one really watches TV and they watch it here? You know, and so
So
Coca-Cola.
it's interesting you say that.
Go ahead.
Sorry, because like with the pandemic, I feel that people definitely have been watching a lot more TVs. I know that there's been like insane numbers for platforms like Netflix or HBO, and there was like a few new platforms that just launched during the past like 12 months. But also, I mean, when we look at big events, sport events like the NFL or the Super Bowl, it seems that those ads are like became almost like a thing, you know, like super famous, and they're still traditional advertising. I think that maybe it's just that the use you make of it, instead of being really about like selling a product, it shifts towards more like storytelling and more like selling a brand, selling a lifestyle, more like education about just about a brand.
Yeah, I
What do
think
you
you made two important points there. The first is one I disagree with and the one I adamantly agree with. So the first is, for example, the most predictable spike in Twitter usage every week. There are lots of spikes that happen randomly when like something like GameStop or something, where like everyone's talking about something, but every week it's during the commercial breaks of NFL, of football games. So in other words, the game stops, there's like a Jeep commercial, and everyone gets on their phone and starts tweeting, oh, did you see that last play, blah, 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 right? Like that's when everyone's using Twitter. So said differently, where are people's eyeballs? They're not looking up here anymore. So even though a lot of people are watching the Super Bowl, or a lot of people are watching Netflix, which is, by the way, a different thing than traditional TV. If there are commercials, which there aren't on Netflix because you pay a subscription, if there are commercials, you're not watching them, you're down here. So that's one point. The second point would be, totally agree that if you spend money on traditional media, like a TV ad, you have to, as a brand, be thinking about it as brand equity storytelling, as you put it, not direct response marketing. And those are two main flavors that advertising falls into: brand equity, direct response. Brand equity
Brand
is
equity.
brand equity means you see an ad for a Jeep or a Coke, you don't like jump out of your bed or off your couch and like run to the bodega and buy a Coke, right? You're not like immediately like, oh my God, great idea. Like that's what I need right now. You're like, like, okay. And you see like 1,200 Coke ads over the course of a couple of years. And then like the next time you're at a fridge and there's a Coke and a Snapple and a tea, you get the Coke, right? And so you're just sort of building the warmth, the brand equity, the storytelling of like, you know what Coke is. You think of it in a happy, warm, and fuzzy way. Direct response marketing is what you see on like Instagram, where it's like, here's a bag, here's a dress, here's a pair of sunglasses, buy it right now. Like click a button,
Yeah.
hit add your credit card, it shows up 2 days later. So the goal of those ads is like, we spent $5,000 on ads or on an influencer or whatever. I want a direct response. I want to purchase today that I can measure, as opposed to people just kind of know we exist and that's okay. And they might buy 14 months from now. And the main reason for that difference is, well, there are two. One, digital advertising is way more measurable. So I know exactly that I've shown an ad to Mizell and then Mizell made a purchase. Whereas I don't know that Mizell saw the Jeep ad or didn't. Don't know.
That makes sense. It seems though that younger generation, Gen Z and millennials, they pay more and more attention to, a brand's message and story before buying. What's their social and ecological commitment. So maybe there's a way that traditional advertisement can be used this way. I think especially we anticipate the end of the pandemic, hopefully in the next year or so, and people are going to be outside a lot. When you say traditional advertising is dead, I feel there's definitely an opportunity in the next year or so to like use, this momentum of like this euphoria of everyone being outside and wanting to, be around one another, to maybe like, use those billboards and those prints, especially in cities like New York. I feel that are really made of, all these prints like all over the city. It would be weird to me to think of it like without any of it, like any prints, any billboard. What do you think?
Well, it's like, it would be like if I said taxis are dead.
Yeah.
You know, and
Like
Uber killed it, right? You like most people could probably like wrap their head around that, right? It's not that. And by the way, like a lot of yellow cabs use Uber. Like the cab driver.
Exactly, they don't necessarily compete with one another. And there's more and more traditional ads like prints I see who have like a call to action that is like a QR code, for example, that sends you then to like a landing page, a website. So maybe there's a way to integrate online marketing into traditional ads.
Yeah, so I think we need to make a distinction. Like you're sort of, when you're using the term, you're meaning traditional media, which is just like a billboard or a radio ad or a TV ad, or like these are traditional ad buys, traditional media. What's definitely dead and like really isn't up for debate is traditional ad agencies. So the way it works is there are four enormous companies, enormous. One was worth $50 billion, so the B, and it had like 800 ad agencies that it owned. And these weren't like little 4-person ad agencies. Like I worked at one of them, 6,000 people. And there are 800 of those agencies that are owned by these big, one of them is French, it's called Publicis.
Yeah.
And right. And then there's WPP, there's Omnicom, there's IPG. So these are the four giants. And those four companies own all of the big ad agencies that anyone's heard of. And by the way, a lot of these don't even exist anymore. So I'm dating myself, but Gray, J. Walter Thompson, Ogilvy and Mather, BBDO, Young and Rubicam. These are all the famous ad agencies, and they're all owned by one of those four giants. If you
Mm-hmm.
look at the stock price of WPP, which is the biggest giant, it used to be worth $50 billion 5 years ago. It's worth 13 billion now.
Wow.
So it's like basically a fifth the size. It's down to 80% stock while the stock market's gone up. You know, they have basically taken their 800 ad agencies and started colliding them into each other. So what happened was WPP owned an agency that specialized in buying media. They owned an ad agency that specialized in PR. They specialized in coming up with the idea, specialized in production. And so what they've started doing is putting it all together so that that new thing can do all of it and can do it
Mhm.
faster and in a more digital way to keep up. So they went from like 800 agencies that they owned to like 500 or 400 because it's like pruning a tree,
Yeah.
you know, to try to save the sinking ship. But what's happening is all the brands that pay these agencies are like, I could just work with a smaller agency. I can just do it myself. I can advertise digitally. I can buy Facebook ads. If I am going to do a TV spot or a banner ad, I'm going to have a cool girl like Mizelle coming up with the ideas that are actually relevant, not 58-year-old men in a boardroom in a fancy office building. So when I say traditional advertising is dead, I mean traditional ad agencies are dying, and what's replacing it is things like the Hub, hip little agencies, people doing it in-house is a big trend. So the brand
It
not
is.
an agency. Yeah.
But do you think so? Just to like react about what you just said, there is more and more indeed like in-house departments for advertisement. Do you think it's actually working? That people know what they're doing? Because it seems that the really the advantage of these agencies, like most of them are specialized in one one sector of activity, and they have a knowledge of the industry that maybe one small company doesn't, because they've worked with dozens and dozens of other brands just like this new brand that just signed with them. um
Yeah, I'm just looking at my other screen here to see the trend here, like how much is it actually happening?
yeah,
It's a lot. I mean, a lot of brands are bringing it in
it
house.
is.
The answer to your question is like, like let's just say let's say you, Mizelle, if you've been born 5 years earlier and we're in New York, someone like you with your skill set, you'd probably go work at an ad agency because it's like well respected. It's a good thing to get on your resume, da da da.
Hmm.
Um, and then like, and that's what I did. I'm like, whatever, 5, 6 years older than you.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, okay, this is dying. This isn't like where the cool shit's happening. They don't get it. It's slow. Clients are leaving. It feels like death. Where do I go? What do I do? I started a company. You started a company. Someone else would have been like, I guess I'll go in-house. I'll find some brand that I really like, which is like some cool fashion brand or some makeup thing or whatever I like in the world. And I'll go and just like, instead of working in marketing at an ad agency and one of my clients is the fashion brand, I'll just go work at the fashion brand. So to answer your question, a lot of the bodies that are building these in-house teams are people that just used to work at ad agencies. So I think it
Yeah.
does work.
I like partially agree with that, because I feel like the appeal to working at an agency for a lot of creative is like this like diversity of work, the fact that you like don't you're not always on the same project with the same client. And I think there's definitely a loss of like the best talents whenever you go in-house, just because forever like for like any, I don't know, food beverage company, CPG, like it's just not as creatively challenging as working for an agency that has like 20, 30 different clients.
I think
um
that's a great point. And like on the other end of the spectrum, by the way, is like another trend we should talk about, which is the freelancer economy, which like we both have participated in, right? And like if you were to call me up, right, and say like, hey, like I'm trying to figure out what to do with my career, what should I do? I'd be like, Mizelle, you're so talented. You could just charge $100 an hour and hit up different brands and have 3, 5, 8 clients at a time, make either make a ton of money and be super busy, or actually no, you can like start a company or like do shit you care about and then 20 hours a week consult. but because you're making such a high hourly rate. So many of my friends, instead of staying at an ad agency or going in-house, they're choosing the third option, which is way more independence, way more diversity. They get to work with a lot of clients, always be creative, make their own schedule, work for themselves, and they make a shit ton more money than an ad agency can pay or whatever.
I mean, it's very appealing for sure to be, working for yourself, to be a freelancer. However, like, especially because of the pandemic, like, I've seen that myself, it's like highly competitive. And now, like, me with like 2-3 years of experience, I end up, competing for the same jobs with people who have like 5 to 10 years experience. So, how, like, what's like the few things that freelancers should do in order to like pitch themselves, to like small brand, to like work as freelancers?
I think the first thing is figuring out what your pitch is, what your story is. It's the same thing if you're selling a product or selling yourself as a product, as a human, as a freelancer. It's like, what do you do, right? And the tighter the better. If you have a website that says, I do styling for sustainable fashion brands, that's like so niche. And then your email, your sales email, when you like try to get a new client, it's like, hi, I'm Mizel. I do, styling for sustainable fashion brands, whatever. Then you need some proof,
Yeah.
case studies, testimonials, like some social proof that you know what you're doing. And you can build that up quickly by working for below the rate you want. If you want $100 an hour, work for 20, work for free, go work, the hub does this all the time. We do work for free for the coolest brands so that we can say we've worked with the coolest brands, but I just give it to them for free, right? But it's worth it because it's bait to get other work later. So know who you are, get the collateral, which is your case studies, your testimonials, and then build a funnel. I think the third mistake that a lot of people make is like they're scared. I've done the freelance thing sort of, even though I own a company, I like consult on the side. If you reach out to 14 brands and write a really thoughtful email, this is who I am, here's my, examples of my work, let's work together. One of them will get on the phone with you and maybe it works, but it probably doesn't. And then you sit there after 2 weeks of like writing those emails and going back and forth and getting on one phone call. And you're like, I suck. The market doesn't like me. I'm trying to charge too much. I don't have enough experience. I got beat out by someone better. I suck.
Yeah.
And the answer is like, no. Like the hub, for example, in the next 8 weeks, we have 8,000 email addresses that we're emailing, 8,000. And we're not emailing them once, we're emailing them 7 times until they respond to us. So 56,000 emails will be sent in the next 2 months, 56,000. And I'm not exaggerating when I say I'll make 10 to 15 deals, 10 to 15 deals.
That's impressive.
So I always say, well, it's impressive or depressing. It's like, I don't know. It's like, I sent 8,000 emails and I'm only going to make 10 deals. Like, yeesh. So
yeah, but you automate those emails, I assume. I mean, there's softwares to like assist you to send 8,000 emails, and it's not like.
Exactly. So, yeah, I mean, if you're a freelancer, I always say you need to email 1,000 people, and I guarantee you'll get a client. If you tighten your pitch as to who you are, and you're not just like, I'm good at a lot of stuff, hire me. It's like, no, be good at the narrowest thing in the whole world. Build a website or like a sales email and or all the above that commemorate that, memorialize that, like, here are 3 clients I've worked with and the work that came out of it, here's a testimonial, whatever. And then email 1,000 people. If you follow that formula, tight, know what you are, have examples of your work, email 1,000 people, I guarantee that you will have 1 client, and maybe you'll have 4, but you have 1,
That makes sense.
and that pays your rent, right? Boom. And then you can build off of that and like repeat that process, or that client tells their friends. But for people that are just making the jump, I'm like, tighten your story, build your collateral, send 1,000 emails. You can do all of that in a week or 2. You will have a client. And I think that makes it less scary, or I hope it does.
Yeah, a little bit. Let's go back to advertising a little bit. I just want to know exactly, can you explain what the hub does for brand, what's different, and how do you just see like the future of advertising going? Like,
Yeah, I mean, the hub just is really trying to um, disrupt one very small part of advertising, which is when I worked at a big ad agency, which now was like quite a long time ago, 7, 8 years ago, there was a term that was used a lot, always on. And always on is the opposite of TV, which is you come up with an ad, takes a long time to make and produce, and then you put it on, meaning like you pay for media slots, and that TV ad runs for like 3 or 4 months. So it's on, and then it's off, and you put on a new TV ad later.
yeah.
You might have like 1 or 2 or 3 a year. So it's very slow. It's like on, off. But we live in this world, it's like laughable for me to explain it this way because it's like, duh. But there was a time when people were just learning that this is how people are, where it's always on. There's always publishing, there's always communicating, always.
Mhm.
And so big ad agencies move slow. They're designed to come up with the idea and make the TV ad and da da da. So brands that are still, they've still stuck with the big agencies. They're like, we need to move faster. We need to move cheaper. We need to be communicating all the time, not just TV ads a couple times a year. We need always on. And still, even though it's been 7 years, ad agencies don't have big ones, don't have a solution for this.
Mhm.
So what's happening? All their clients are leaving and building teams in-house or working with the hub. And so increasingly big companies that historically might have made all of their ads with an ad agency, they're using the hub now to create a lot of their content, at least for social, for their website, for their newsletters, for da da da. And my goal would be that they actually make their TV ads, they make their print ads using creators on the hub.
So what's the catch then? Because there must be a reason why people still keep using ad agency. Is it a matter of quality? Like, what's how does the hub, like compete um
Part of
with?
it is just dumb inertia. It's just this is the way it's been done always. Let's keep doing it. You
Yeah.
don't want to be the person, brand managers. So like if you work at Kellogg's and you're the brand manager of Pop Tarts, which is one of the brands that Kellogg owns, you usually do that for 2 years and then you get a promotion or just a switch and you move to a different brand. You work on Pringles or you work on like Rice Krispie treats. And so it's like politics in the United States where you are, a senator or something for 2 years, and then you have to get reelected. So if you
Mhm.
fuck up in that 2 years, you're not going to get reelected. So your incentive to take big risks to do stuff that may
Yeah.
be the best, the betterment of your state or something, or in this case, your company, like maybe the hub's the right choice, but are you really going to be the one that fires an ad agency you've worked with for 14 years and switch to some startup no one's ever heard of? And if it doesn't work, you're the fucking idiot that made the mistake. And like, if you work, like you were saying, the best talent and all that, if you work at like Pop Tarts as like a brand manager, you're probably not like the biggest risk taker in the world. Otherwise, you would have started your own company, be a freelancer, work at Google. So these people are safe. So that's one reason. Another reason is like indemnification, like risk. You know, a big ad agency, they have big legal teams, they have big, like if something goes wrong, a brand can wrap it around the neck of a very big beast. If something goes wrong with me and they needed to sue me for $14 million, I don't have $14 million. So they're
Mhm.
not really going to get their money back. You know, that's another reason. So I think it's just like, it's a tale as old as time. It's just, we're a disruptor. We're a new thing that people are scared of. There's legal risk, there's creative risk, there's a lot of fear, but it's definitely moving in this direction.
Definitely. I mean, I feel like we're like a generation of entrepreneurs, like especially with like platforms like TikTok, where people like become their own, like everyone is an influencer nowadays, and I feel that you told me, I remember at work at the hub, that by in the next 5 years, like 50%, I don't remember the exactly what it was, 50% of the workforce would be freelancers. So
So
what
glad
it,
you said
it
that.
was,
I'm so glad you said that because I say shit like that now, and with COVID, everyone's like, yeah, obviously, right? But thank you. I said that years ago, right? And I wrote articles about it and stuff, but yeah, it's true, right? And COVID makes it a certainty. It was almost certainly going to be true. Now it's definitely true.
yeah,
But yeah, half the workforce by 2025. It was the thing I told you a couple years ago. Like,
meaning like translate, meaning that these people are like definitely more willing to take risk. I wonder if like freelancer will be hired in the future to maybe have this role that brand managers have right now, if there's a way that, you know, it can maybe not be such like a stable position and can be disrupted at this level, so then brands can work with like more interesting companies like the hub that really like offer like compelling services at a lower
yeah,
at,
I mean, listen, there are two ways to build a brand that are happening right now, and they're completely opposite, and you see both of them happening.
mm-hmm.
So the old way of making a brand is very few people, like 10 people in a boardroom, come up, like you said, with the story of like what Coke is all about and the ads and whatever. And then they, spread it out to 14 million people that are watching the TV ads and da da da. Now, as you well know, a lot of people like you have like 20,000 followers on Twitter, on Instagram. Like, it's not just influencers, right? It could even just be like you're just whatever. You have 700 followers. It doesn't matter. But you're talking about products. You're like,
Yeah.
like you're talking with your friends. You're commenting. You can like tweet at a brand, and literally 20 years ago, you'd have to like get a meeting with someone at Oreo Cookie. Now you can just like talk to them, but like right away. So
Mm-hmm.
brands are being built now by people, by everyday people, which informs the brand. So like people at Oreo are like, how are people talking about us? What do people think about us? Like, so a lot of times like young up and coming brands are actually, and it's not even just, I'm not even just being hypothetical, or sometimes literally I work with brands that run Facebook ads, and they'll run an ad for this shirt, and some of them will say it's made with Supima cotton, it's like really soft, and some will say it's black and hip and you can wear it in Brooklyn. If they sell more shirts talking about black and hip and selling it in Brooklyn, guess what this brand is all about now?
Yeah, like being hip, like
Right. And they never mention the softness again, ever, because the people have spoken, right? Like more people are
to
interested in
what
the hip
matters.
story. So the brand literally is reverse engineered. It's made by the people, not made by the brand. So your question about, can a brand manager be replaced by a freelancer? In the old model, absolutely not. Brand managers are the keeper of the brand. They're like,
Yeah.
no, we're the fucking soft brand and we'll always be the soft brand and da da da. And if anyone tries to change us, it's my job as the brand manager to like protect. And brand managers are so specific about like, we use these colors and we talk in this way and we act this way and we don't act this way. And it's the enemy of always on, because always on moves fast. And if you have all these rules, it's like, wait, is this in the right tone of voice? Does this do this right? What do you think of this photo? It slows everything down. But the brands that are moving faster, absolutely. Like, I think it would be really interesting to not be so precious about your brand and be like, okay, let's bring me Zellen this month. Let's see what ideas she has. And she can be the brand manager for a bit. And then Pojo will be the brand manager. And it's healthy if there's new life constantly and new opinions, but it's a totally different way of thinking.
Yeah, I mean, there's also definitely, I think, a concern to like protect your stories, your values, and it gets a little lost, I feel, if everyone has a say in it. There's a balance, in my opinion, to be kept between, I mean, the intent that you put in your company when you like started it, and then what everyone is adding to it, especially because it's so influenced by everything else going like you know, in society, like whatever like events is happening at that time, I feel it influence your company. And that's why it's important. I feel that there's like a person or two that are really like the keeper of like what's the essence of the brand. So like when things don't go the way you want them to go, like you know that at heart this is who you are and why you do things.
Exactly. And that is the tug of war that's happening right now, is like,
Yeah.
where is that line? Do you actually like just fully, you know, if someone was just like, if Elon Musk was like, hey, James, here's $1 billion, go have fun, I would definitely take a little bit of that money. And just as an experiment, wouldn't it be cool to like basically crowdsource a brand? Like
Yeah.
have I don't know, 10,000 people that are interested in fashion, and they like vote on every decision, or like whatever, like, or
Mm-hmm.
just the people that buy. And actually there are brands that do this, Mizel. There's a brand you should look up. It's not really your style, but it's kind
I
of
was
cool.
about to ask you.
It's not really your style, but it's cool. And they did this a long time ago, 5 years, 10 years ago. They're called Beta Brand. They're based out of San Francisco, and they crowdsource their line every season. So they basically are like, here are a bunch of ideas we have. It's sort of like Kickstarter. Which would you
Mm-hmm.
buy? Like, do you fuck with any of these? They send them to all past customers. Past customers are like this one, hate that one. And then they make the ones that people like, and they don't make the ones that people don't like. And it's their way of like never having stuff on the shelf that won't get sold, because they
Yeah.
guaranteed built-in demand. It's sort of brilliant. And then their followers are really loyal because they have a say. Like, they're buying clothes that they've been like, that's what I want.
No,
Right.
definitely. I feel that's something that we're trying to like implement as well. Like, I mean, for our brand, definitely using more like a pre-order, like business model. And same, you know, more and more brands. I remember, like, I mean, when CJ was working at Need Supply, which no longer exists, but was like a pretty big company from Virginia, they started actually posting in their stories like, oh, do you like this design better or this one, and why? Do you like this color or this color? I think there's a way to do it so you only present the options that make sense to you brand. I think that too many option is not a good thing, um because then it's just like open for, you know, like anybody's interpretation. And also that I feel that there's a level of like experience and knowledge that must come when people give their opinion. You know, it can't just be anybody, even though everyone wear clothes, you know, like depending on like, are you a luxury brand or are you like, you know, a fast fashion brand? Then like there's this like level of expectation that you need to make sure people like have and understand when they give their opinion.
So let me take it even a step further, because it actually gets even crazier. There's something called the wisdom of crowds. And it's the closest thing to magic I've ever, I don't believe in God and like it, but it's magical. And the original example they give is going to like a county fair with a jar of jelly beans. It's like this big, and they're like, Mizel, guess how many jelly beans are in this huge thing, right? And then
Yeah.
they go to, and no one can hear the other people's answers. That's the rule. So they ask
Mhm.
you, then they ask CJ, then they ask like 40,000 people at this fair, at this music festival or whatever. And if you add up all the answers and divide by 40,000, the average answer is the number of jelly beans.
No way.
Yes, it's true. I'll send it to you. So it doesn't make sense. I don't understand, but the
Yeah.
one that maybe makes more sense is like, not that I'm picking on you for being European, but you go to like a football game, soccer game, and they're singing a song. Ole, 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 ole.
Yeah.
It's in key, but like 60% of people are tone deaf. So how is it possible that if everyone's singing, it doesn't sound like absolute shit, because they're like, most of the people actually aren't singing the right notes. But
Hmm.
what happens is some people are wrong this way and some people are wrong this way, and then your ear hears it in the middle correctly. So there's such a thing as objective truth, like the correct number of jelly beans, or if you had 10,000 people design a fashion line together, That's actually like objectively what society wants.
Yeah.
But to your point, there's like the whole thing about art, whether it's fashion or photography or whatever, is like there's subjective taste. Like you're different than the masses. You're different than everyone. And so even though everyone might be here and want this shirt, and you're like the tastemaker that's like, actually, this is what's cool. Steve Jobs used to always famously say, like, customers don't know what they want until you give it to them. Right. And so that's the push pull, is like, are you the tastemaker that tells people what's cool, or do you let them tell you what the masses think is good? And those
Exactly.
are just very different businesses, very different ways of living, really.